See where it says emotional awareness? I just showed you that. That's our lesson right now. So what we're going to do, there, he got it up, Dean. You're just amazing. Thank you. We have a YouTube video we're going to see if y'all recognize this. How is she feeling? Can y'all see? Anger. I can tell you, do I look like a sweet little old lady? There was a time when I was so angry. It was in the middle of a family trauma that had been going on, and I was like, so I slammed the door. I want to tell you about me being angry. When I slammed that door, it felt so good. So I did again, and again, and again, and the frame came off the door. Okay, so everybody has this point where they might need to ratchet it down, right? Okay, everybody. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go to this one. Oh, it did. Okay, say it with me. EQ is what? Being aware of feelings in the moment so we can choose to act like Jesus. EQ is all about behavior. Behavior is a choice. Do you think Jesus would have slammed the door till the frame came off? Probably not. All right, so where we are is emotional self-awareness in this, on your 4-quadrant model. On your sidebar, it would be up at the top. And what are we going to do? We're going to, because we follow Jesus, did I tell you how I researched y'all before I agreed to come. I'm just so impressed with you. Personal growth is impressive to me. My husband and I are lifelong learners, and the fact that you had this structure set up was something I wanted to be part of. Now, I have to tell you, at first I didn't think I could do this because at 9 o'clock is my bedtime, and I told that to Pastor Fred, and I told him, I don't think I can do this, and I turned him down. And do you know what he did? It was a Wednesday, and he and his team prayed that night. I woke up in the middle of the night. It was 1:18 in the morning, and I thought, what? And so I went and I knew I was supposed to go read Luke 1:18. Do you know what that is? That is Zechariah. That is John the Baptist's father saying to the angel Gabriel, how do I know this is going to happen? I am old. And that's what I had said. I'm old. So I got up the next morning and I called and I said, no, I'll do this because this is God. So you have to be really aware that God has his hand on this. I really believe this is something that can be a tool, can be very important in your life. All right, where are we going? We're going to Colossians 2:9 first, because Christ lives in all the fullness of God in a human body. Okay, so we're going to look at these different scriptures. There's the top one. We're looking at love. Jesus said he felt genuine love. So I want you to see that when people say to you, don't be so emotional, they are wrong. They are wrong. We are emotional. They should be saying, don't be so dramatic. Don't be so upset. But we're always going to have emotions. Sorrow. Jesus wept. And God told me, I was praying about that. You know, why would he do that? He knew Lazarus he was going to raise him. Have you ever had somebody say it's a lack of faith to cry, to be sad about something you know is going to work out? Just don't. Jesus knew that was going to work out, and he wept. I don't have theology for that. I'm making an observation. Remember, we make observations. It's interesting to me, and I want to talk to him more about it because he just told me that this morning. All right, so we've got compassion. If you are willing, you can heal me. I'm willing. Anger. He looked around at them angrily, was deeply saddened by their hard hearts because they didn't heal him. But he did. Jesus did. All right, amazement. What does it take to amaze Jesus? That's pretty amazing in itself, isn't it? I haven't seen like faith in all of Israel. This is the centurion. Do you remember that? Distress. This was in the garden. He took Peter, James, and John with him and became deeply troubled and distressed when he told them to stay with me. Did they stay with him? They stayed with him. Did they stay awake? No. That would wound me a lot. He was distressed. He felt abandoned. Have you ever felt rejected or abandoned? Because if you have, he's the one that you can talk to because he's been through it. My prayers are different now when I look at behavior and I say, oh, I got really rejected last week, Lord. Help me go through this. I don't know how to deal with it. Help me see my way back to loving this person. Ever had somebody you just knew you were supposed to love, but you sure didn't want to? Jesus had that. But he had joy. We watched the little girl have joy. All right, so here's the next one. Okay. At the top of your handout, it's got Jesus quoted. I know where I'm going, and I know where I've been. That's really good. I don't always know where I'm going. I know ultimately where I'm going because I've made a commitment. I believe you have as well. I want you to look at the ones where it says people with this competence, people that have this skill. Put a little mark by the one that you do the best. And if you can't see that you do any of those bullet points the the best, then put a little mark by the one you want to do the best, okay? That's on the people that have this skill. And when you finish that, that can be some prayer talk with the Lord tonight or tomorrow. The next one is people lacking this competence, and I'm going to be quiet while you look those over and you listen. Ask the Lord to tell you where you need to grow. And put a mark by that one, by that bullet point under people lacking this. When you get down to the bottom, do you feel stressed out of balance in work, life, health, family? We talked with Chris just a minute ago. Look at that one on the second one. Fail to gain insight and information from what their bodies might be trying to tell them. There's a lot of research on that right now. Did you get the one that you need to work on marked? Good. Tonight or tomorrow, make a date with God. Here's that scripture. He said to Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, my heart is breaking and full of sorrow. My heart is full of sorrow and breaking with sadness. Stay here and watch with me. I can't even hardly read that. Did you hear me fumble it? That makes me so sad. So sad that our Lord would have that. And they didn't stay with him. I mean, they stayed there physically, but they weren't with him emotionally. They didn't support him. And we're going to have that. This is not heaven. This is earth. And we're going to get wounded. And the best way to get through that is to see how he did it. Okay. Do you know your purpose? I want you to write on your notes what you believe your purpose is. We're going to use this question tomorrow as well. So might as well go ahead and get it down now. And then I'd like for you to take a moment and talk to the person beside you. If you don't have somebody beside you, you can scoot over a little bit about what your purpose is. And then that next question, that's kind of unexpected. Which emotions keep you on track of your purpose? Which emotions take you away? Now that can really be, if you knew that, you wouldn't get near as much trouble as we get in trouble. If I know that my heart is set on God and these emotions keep me there and these other ones drag me away, then I'd want to know how to handle those other ones and get back to having the mind of Christ. I think we're running a little behind. Okay? I'm going to let y'all talk about that afterwards. Right now I'm going to tell you a story. Did you get everybody's written it or made a photograph of it? Okay? Did you know stories matter? That's how Jesus taught, right? So I'm going to tell you a story. I have 4 sons. 1,000,000 years ago, when one of them was 6, we were in the midst of a family trauma. Remember me slamming that door? That was that trauma. Okay. He was in 2nd grade, and we had to switch him to a different school. It was necessary. And he was a small frame boy, and small for his age. And he's in a new school, in the middle of a family trauma, and a new teacher. It was not a good time. I got this call from this teacher, and she said, he doesn't look at me, he won't talk to me, he just sits there, and I just want to snatch him bald-headed. Ever had a teacher call up and tell you they want to snatch your child bald-headed? It didn't sit well with me. And so I had tried to tell her, we're in a family trauma. Anyway, it didn't end well. So I I made an appointment with the principal. And what happened was, he told me how sad it was because she really needed me to pay attention and be generous to her emotionally because, and that wasn't his word, that's how I define it, because she had really, really bad asthma and life was hard for her. And I'm like, and I said, I just want him to move him out of this class. And he said, no. I said, I want him in it, if, you know, she said this. He said, well, no, that didn't go over well with me. And I want to tell you that if I had been emotionally intelligent back then, I could have talked to her differently. I could have explained things differently. I could have asked her questions. I could have asked my son questions. I did later on. Turns out, he said, she scares me. She sounds like Darth Vader. I don't want to look at her. Well, you know, if you're in the middle of family trauma and you think you have Darth Vader for a teacher, you're not going to look at them. And he didn't. And it made her, she took it personally. If she'd had emotional intelligence back then, she would have listened to me. She would have talked, asked questions instead of just telling. If the principal had had emotional intelligence, he would have investigated a little bit more. He might have. We all handled it badly. I'm hoping that we're equipping y'all to not have some of these things to the degree that it was bad at my family. Does that make sense? Wouldn't you like that? Not to have Darth Vader for a teacher? Not to act like a turtle? Because he just kept trying to get away from her. Okay, here's some books that I did tell you about. The one in the middle, which you can't see because I didn't put it up there, is the one my internist had recommended. It is called Molecules of Emotions. It's by Candace Pert. It is really research and lots of science. I did not go well through that one, so it's not one I put up there, but if you might want to watch that or read that, Chris. It's deep, and but it's research. So it connects emotions with molecules. The first one was fascinating, When the Body Says No, because it's a secular book, but it's a physician, and what he's telling is about his observations about his patients. Chris and I were just talking about observations, and Dr. Gabriel Maté began to see that the patients that came in had a physical problem that kind of sounded like a result of an emotional thing. I mean, like, it sounded, you know, the verse that says, on earth as it is in heaven, it sounded kind of like that. And so he would go through and tell you his observations. I found it fascinating. This other one is by a Christian physician, and he does both. He does the research. Remember, when your body says no, it's not research, it's observation. Okay, what's fascinating is I want to tell you about my own observations, okay? Because I am really good at awareness. In fact, to the point where it's like, I do want to be in a turtle, and because I get too much, I get overloaded with being aware of too much after a while. I don't do horror movies, I can tell you that. So, I knew a man, everybody I'm going to tell you about, I personally knew. I knew a man that used to say, they're just a pain in the neck. That just gives me a pain in the neck. What a pain in the neck. And he got melanoma, guess where? The next person I'm going to tell you about was a friend of mine from Sunday school, and she went through a wretched divorce, and she would say, he just makes me sick to my stomach. I just get sick. I'm just sick to my stomach. And she got stomach cancer. You see a pattern here? And the last friend had a terrible way of saying, she would say, this just kills me. This just kills me. And she has a condition now that if she's not in just perfect balance chemically, she ends up in an emergency room on death's door. Now, I thought that was strange. And so I began to ask God, what is it that I'm saying? You know, why? am I seeing this? Do you remember James 3, the book of James, that talks about the power of the tongue? It is powerful. This is what God was telling me. So I want to read you James 3, 6 through 9. And among all the body parts, the tongue is a flame of fire. It is a whole world of wickedness, corrupting your entire body. It can set your whole life on fire, for it is set on fire by hell itself. People can tame all kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and fish, but no one, except Jesus, can tame the tongue. It is restless and evil, and it's full of deadly poison. Sometimes it praises our Lord and Father, and sometimes it curses those who've been made in the image of God. Have you been made in the image of God? Do you curse yourself like these people did? I asked the Lord, what is it that I'm saying that I need to stop? Okay, because I am so good at being aware, I watch people. I'm not the most comfortable friend to have. I'm just warning you, because it can make you very, very uncomfortable. Anyway, I watch people, and if they're doing, and I'm also extremely logical. If it's not something, if they're doing something that I don't think is logical, I would say, that just makes me crazy. That is not a good thing. That doesn't sound like Jesus. That doesn't honor God. And I would say it. I don't know why he did that. He just said he didn't want to. That just makes me crazy. I can't figure that out. That makes me crazy. And the minute God started telling me, that's what you need to stop. And I did. And if you remember in the Bible where when Jesus talked about the house that got cleaned of one evil spirit, and then 7 came back in. All right, so I quit saying that, but I began to say something positive. I quit saying, that just makes me crazy. I began to say, Lord, I don't understand this, and you are all-knowing. So if it's something you want me to understand, I trust that you're going to give that understanding. You're going to open my understanding, and I'll understand it. And if it's not, then give me the grace to understand that it's a mystery, and I'm not going to understand that now. And just give me the mind of Christ. We have the mind of Christ, Scripture says. I can tell you, life has been better since I quit saying that, and I just learned to say that like January. So, ask him what you're saying. Are you cursing yourself like it says in John 3? Okay? I'm going to give you a minute to write down what you might be hearing. I've prayed over you that you might hear something that you need to stop. I don't want you to get ill. Did you get it? Okay. All right. What do you think? I want you to write down what you're thinking. You like this picture? This is not my house. I'm over on this side with my back to him, and I could feel his eyeballs on me. I can tell you. Can you feel it right now? Can you feel that shiver? Okay. So what are you thinking? Remember, think impacts the way you feel, impacts the way you act. What are you thinking? If you were standing this far from this cute little teddy bear, and you turned around, would you be thinking something fun? Oh, look, he's come to visit. That's not what I was thinking. Write what you thought when you saw this. Write what you feel, because they're connected. And then write what you would do. I can tell you what I did. I did take out my phone and take his picture, but I didn't stay there. I left. What would you do? This is something you're going to find will help your EQ. Think, feel, act. Think, feel, act. If you're doing something you don't like, trace it back. What was I thinking? We say that. What was I thinking? But do it for real this time. All right. All right. We're almost finished. You have homework for tomorrow. Do you see that one that has animals? It was on the first section. It says 5-minute personality assessment. It's if you have taken a DISC assessment. It's a modified DISC assessment. I want you to take this before we have classes or sessions tomorrow, because it's going to help you with your accurate self-assessment. There's instructions on the front and on the back. It's going to tell you a little bit more about the personality that you come up with. It's easy. It's not a test. It's an assessment. Everybody gets some good stuff and everybody gets some bad stuff. All right? All right. So, do you have questions? I want to tell you something, then we're going to have question and answer. Do we have time? Chris, are we doing question and answer? We are? Okay. Do not leave before, because I want to tell you one more thing after the question and answer. Please.
Okay. Yes, we're doing Q&A again, so get your questions ready here. Raise your hand, and someone will bring you a microphone. Or if you're on Zoom, go ahead and chat it, put it in the chat box, and I'll read off of them.
Yes, ma'am. He's coming.
Hi, thank you so much for speaking. So in terms of EQ, do you have any advice for self-discipline and consistency?
Yeah, the thing about the curriculum, and just because of expediency, we couldn't cover all 26 attributes tonight or even tomorrow. If you will begin to Google self-discipline and look it up and read books on that, that's how I did it before I found this list and got the curriculum. I'm very blessed that I have the curriculum. I use it with my clients. And so, like I said, we have this sheet for every one of them. So for behavioral self-control, which is what you're talking about, there's a sheet. We didn't choose that. Now, Pastor, I don't know what he's going to teach. He might teach you next quarter. But this is the way I would go about it. I would begin to look at the things that research says about how to develop. I would look at, read books, and then you can use this, the sidebar with the 26 attributes. Read your Bible and ask the Lord to show you examples of behavioral self-control, because it's in there. It's in there. Nobody, I mean, he climbed up on that cross for us. If you want to learn, he's the very best. But also, and I hadn't told y'all this, I give out a free 1 hour session just to because most people don't know what this is, and so I tell them. So if you get home and you decide that you want to contact me, use my email address, and I'll set up a time, and you can just ask me questions. Now, it's not a session in that I'm going to sit there and teach you. I'm just going to help you understand and then figure out what you want to do and maybe give you a little heads up on how to work that through. But it's free because most people don't know what EQ is. And so okay. Any other questions?
I have a response to that. Real quick, I think she kind of touched on it. Think, feel, and act. A lot of times when we're not disciplined about things, you need to think about why are you not disciplined, right? Because the lack of discipline is the lack of action. So you got to think about what is the way that you think about that particular area of life, and how do you change that then, right? Because your thoughts will lead to different feelings about that, which can lead to better actions, right? And so doing that, and then also as
Habit.
Yes.
Habit is the lazy man's way to be cool. I mean, seriously, if you can get a habit done, then you don't have to think about doing it. The brain is lazy. It just wants to survive, and it doesn't like to change the status quo. So if you can create a habit of self-discipline in the area that you're most interested in, just start with one area, accomplish that, then move it on to the same skills that you learn to make that one area disciplined. Do you know anybody that is so disciplined in everything except this? Oh my goodness, you know, that was a big drop off. They aren't disciplined there. I know a woman that is a personal trainer, and she is she's into every exercise, but she can eat like crazy. So she's not disciplined there.
And also, I was going to say,
We should go on the road.
Like Nike says, just do it. A lot of times, I know there are a lot of things, areas in my life that I need to work on and build discipline. And a common one to many Christians is just spending daily time with the Lord. And people, that's a very common one, right? Vast majority struggle with doing it daily. And it's just with a lot of these habits, just do it. Like start with the little things. And yes, exactly, because building habits, the more you do it, the easier it becomes, the more you like it, your feelings change, the way you think about changes, so you want to do it some more. And before you know, it's like, oh, I don't have to make myself spend time with God. I want to spend time with God. I don't feel right if I don't spend time with God. Kind of like how, I like to exercise too, and people who like to exercise, we feel bad if we don't exercise. I'm like people who don't exercise, and so I actually don't like the days that I don't get to exercise. And same with God. I think that was a big pivotal change for my spiritual life when I realized that I now desire to spend time with God. And I just don't feel right if I don't spend every day with God. And so that was very different than when I was younger. And it was like, everyone's like, oh, what's your to-do thing? Or what's your goal? Oh, I want to spend daily time with God. And so it's just a total mind shift, right?
It is. And if you have an accountability partner, that will make the best impression on you. It will be changing. I mean, it's so much more fun if you're going to exercise, if you start out creating a habit of going with someone or whatever works best for you. But accountability, that's why people hire coaches, because what happens is I'll fire my client if they're not doing what they say. You're wasting my time. If we keep coming, we talk about the same thing each time and you haven't done your homework, then you're not growing. And that's what coaches do. We help people to grow. Okay?
Anyone else? Any other questions?
Yeah. Okay. He's
Mine's
coming right there.
I just happened to be reading an article yesterday online that talked about how Asians, especially East Asians, seem to be underrepresented in upper management and CEO, that type of level. And it's disproportionate to the actual percentage that we are in the general population. I was wondering about your thoughts about how these things are culturally entrained in our lives. It talked about East Asians, or humility and being part of the group and supporting the group seems to be so important. Whereas, interestingly, they talked about South Asian Indians have more of a, maybe more of an aggressive, assertive type of personality and culture, and that's why they seem to progress a little bit further. And then the other thoughts about, many of these things on the EQ lists, I think culturally, we stress a lot about being technically competent. Our children are very academically proficient.
Right.
Probably very musically proficient, because those things can be graded.
Measured.
They could be graded in an objective way. You can see things in an objective, measurement. And so how do you propose that we can be a little bit more sensitive to these things that are considered maybe soft, emotional type of skills that are not as culturally relevant in our upbringing?
A couple of things. Just on a quick level, I had this other company. I do assessments with the Institute, but I also have an assessment with this other company that I said I had a circular model. I love their assessments, but that circular model made me kind of dizzy, and so I don't use it. But what they do have is one of their assessments that talks about strengths and kind of a mindset. It uses areas of the globe, and this is the strongest, I had a group when we went through, and we all came out what they called strategic minded. I think there was one person that was not, out of like 7. And I went and called the company, how did this happen? And she said, well, this is the US, and the US is very strategic. Oh, she said Australia, which was it was an ongoing group, and I had one Australian, and she did not come out strategic. She came out something else, and Australia did not have strategy as being the top. It was really fascinating. So if there are, just what you said, you've observed it, you've read your article, it's the truth. Different areas in different places of the globe have values that are different. They may value different skills better. And if you're aware of it, and that's what we're doing here, we're stirring up that awareness, then you're going to be able to begin making different choices. And the term that you used, and I can't even remember because I blocked it out. You said softer. So what else? How did you describe EQ? Less. Did you say less? Softer. Yeah. Okay, but they are, because I have assessments and I can measure them, okay? Because I measure, what we measure, it's a self-report, and it's always nice to have a baseline, right? This is what I'm doing with your personality for tomorrow. It's gonna give you an idea of how you behave. If you look on the back of it, it'll say, if you turn out to be a lion, you're gonna be one of these people that, and there's not a lot of them percentage-wise around the world, that always is right, you know? We need those people. They've got lots of high energy and then get stuff done. But after a while, you can't have a whole group of them, or you could just go crazy. And I'm part lion, so I'm just telling you that. But if you begin to change your mindset, they're not measurable. They are measurable. Train yourself to be aware of them. Train yourself to notice them. Train yourself to see. If you are going to look and you see all 26 of these in the Bible, okay, in Jesus alone, then you're going to know that this is important, or it wouldn't be there. It's important.
I don't disagree they're measurable, but I think the difference is they're not a public standard.
No. Right. In the business world, that's changing. All this research, it's come from business world, because they're not going to go and do too much research on us. Okay, that's why we had the bottom line in the finances. That's why business started doing research on it, because it was impacting their bottom line. So when you talked about the pharmacy company, the company with the pharmaceuticals, an increase of $55,000 per person in 1 month, that's measurable. We're just not used to measuring that. It is all measurable. It is logical. We're just not trained to see it. The very fact that we don't take into account something as large as emotion is illogical. So if you really, really want to be logical, you have to incorporate the aspect of emotion. That's logical. It's just something we're not used to doing. But the people that have been consistently, remember the statistic about the people that had 90% difference in the high achievers or the average achievers? It was EQ skills. We're just now being able to look at it and see that. The more you go, the more you'll recognize the difference. I know, and you can do this. We've all done it to a certain extent. Some of us are naturally better at it than others, and that goes with some of our personalities. When I'm in that I'm right mood, I don't always hear. I just try to get something done. Now, if I'm in a different mood, the different personality, because when you do your personality assessment, you're probably going to have, there's 4, so you're going to have one that's low, one that's low. You may have 2 that are high, and one's high and one's not so high. That will be kind of a dual aspect of you. It's just another way to think. When we have the mindset of Christ, did you grow up in church? If you did not, then you had to learn this. That's what we're doing here. We're just identifying and naming it. Do you know that the phrase name it and tame it is research? If you can name an emotion or what's going on, anxiety measurably goes down. Who knew that? I thought it was just being silly, right? Name it and tame it. It's measurable. there was a story I read, because I'm always reading stuff, where a father had this little girl that had wanted somebody else's toy. And what he did, so wise, picked her up, put her in a lap, and he said, "This is jealousy. This is jealousy. What you're feeling is jealousy. And this is the way, because we're Christians, we act." Oh my gosh, what would we do? Okay, I have to tell you this story real quick. One of my first moms that was in my class had this child, and she was an amazing mother. She went through all these lessons, because the parent teaches the children the EQ stuff. And he came home from, I think he was in 5th grade at that time. He came home from school, and he said, so-and-so was mean to me today. Well, he was running for student council, and he didn't get it. I bet he was mad about that. I bet, because he was really mean to me about that. Oh, that's what I do to my little brother. That was in 5th grade. What is this kid going to grow up to be like if he's this wise and recognizes the pattern of his own behavior, as well as he can see himself at 5th grade? We want that, don't you? I want that. I want that for my grandchildren. School's hard right now. I know a bus driver. She's scared to death because the parents don't go to the teachers. They talk to the bus drivers now, and they make it physical. That scares me. I think that's sad. This is a good thing to have. Any other questions?
I'm going to take a stab at that, Paul, because it's a good question. I'm totally just coming up with this on the fly, but and I am not at management level at all, but I'm just personally going through an interesting journey in life and exploring things. And I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos and listening to a lot of different speakers. And actually, I literally last night, so God provided, watched a video from an Asian woman who was speaking specifically about your question, and noticing that there are not many Asians who are in management positions because of, she was saying how, what is the word? Basically, if you're an implementer, a producer, you're kind of like the worker bee. And I think, these are broad generalizations, of course, but generally, traditionally, Asians were grown up to be producers and worker bees, and just do as you're told, work hard, keep your head down, right? And you think about just, again, especially like first generation coming here, and then second generation like me growing up here with those first generation parents, Asians are not known for being very in tune with their emotions, right? Our EQ as a whole is probably pretty low, because what are we taught? The dad runs the house, sort of, and children, my dad literally tells me, you, as a child, are meant to listen, you're to be spoken to, you're not to speak back, right? And then we also know, well, the moms kind of run the house too, in a way, and so there's just not a lot of exploration of like, how do you feel about that? Oh, I'm sorry that it made you feel that way. Let's talk about that more. How can we have a healthier relationship here? I think a lot of us, can talk a lot about a lot of emotional deficiencies in our families. And so because of that puts us in a weaker spot in the corporate world, right? Because we were not trained to deal with our emotions. You shut your mouth and you suck it up and you do it for the greater good, save face for the family, right? And just so there's no emotional health there. So you can't expect them to then go into the work world and be exuding with this emotional health and be able to help other people and manage other people. So I think it's going to be a cultural shift too. And I know in my family, I don't think my parents ever said, hey, I want you to be CEO or CFO or CIO or see anything, right? They're like, just work hard, be a doctor and whatever. But yeah, so be an engineer, right? Like these are all very non-emotional job roles. And so I think that's going to shift in the third generation. I know for myself, I'm not really pushing my kids to be a doctor, you know, so, and more open to, hey, whatever God calls you to do, whatever your personality gears you towards, that's what we're going to be good with, so.
It comes from all backgrounds.
I'm sorry.
You've heard of this stiff upper lip?
I'm sorry, can I interrupt real quick? If you have
Sure.
children right now, it's time to pick up your
It's
kids.
time to go. All right, here's the last thing. You can work real hard and learn these skills, and if you don't know Jesus, you're not going to go to heaven. You're going to have a good life here because people will like you better. But if you don't know Jesus, would you please come talk to me or Pastor Tao or his team? Because that's the most important thing. If you don't take anything else away from here, he's the most important thing. Okay? That's it. See you tomorrow. Well, online.
So
Okay.
online tomorrow at 9 o'clock, you should all have the link. If you don't, talk to one of us and we can, and yes, the feedback, thank you. If y'all can shoot that QR code on your phones, give us feedback about tonight, okay?
Thank you.
All right, have a good night.